Welcome to our third of 11 webinars in our 2024 Women in Leadership Executive Leadership Series. And this one specifically is focused on women leaders in nonprofit organizations, and I should add in just in the community, doing things in the community. So I'm Dr. Susan Madsen, founding director of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, and also the Karen Haight Huntsman Endowed Professor of Leadership in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. And I'm the host today and will be the panel moderator. And this event furthers the mission of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, which is to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. And we serve Utah and its residents first by producing relevant, trustworthy, and applicable research. And we just released 3 short reports this week. Second, creating and gathering valuable resources. And third, convening trainings and events like this that inform, inspire, and ignite growth and change for all Utahns. So welcome to all of you today. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Utah Education Network, UEN, John M. Huntsman School of Business, and USU Extension. So I'm going to jump right in. I want to first introduce you to 2 of my friends and the 2 panelists today. We'll start, and they're in the same place today together, which is a treat always. You 2 are such good friends, I know. So I want to start by Emily Bell McCormick is the founder of the Policy Project, a nonprofit that creates movements in order to forward healthy long-term policy at a state and national level with a focus on women and girls and other groups that have been historically overlooked or really negatively impacted by policy. And through her leadership, and I've known Emily for a number of years and seen the progress, the Policy Project has made a significant difference in the state of Utah with both the Period Project and the Teen Center Project. And they're in a new project I'm sure they're going to talk about. But I want to tell you a little bit about her background. So before she came full-time into policy, it seems like, she founded and sold a clothing company, Shabby Apple. I love that name. She was an editor and occasional host of Utah's NBC morning show, KSL Studio 5. And Emily, I think that's where we met.
It is.
You were a guest host and I was on it.
Mm-hmm.
And she also worked as a communication strategy consultant in a myriad of industries. Emily has a master's degree in communication from The Ohio State University and a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism from Brigham Young University. So good to have you, Emily.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
And then Kristin Andrus. She is a community champion who advocates for women, children, and vulnerable populations within and beyond Utah. With 100,000 combined followers on Instagram and YouTube, she empowers others to show up, give back in their communities through advocacy work. And as the head of the Andrus Family Foundation, Kristin is Utah's go-to board member, event host, and bridge builder for nonprofit causes. And she is recognized nationally for her work on period poverty and also on unheeded challenge and barrier to opportunity for girls and women. So in partnership with Emily and her work with the Period Project and the Teen Center Project, she has changed and will continue to do so, I should say, thousands, and I would say even tens of thousands of lives. And she also serves on many other nonprofits. I don't want to take the whole time to introduce you.
No,
I could have
yeah.
made it longer, but Kristin, thanks for joining as well.
Thank you. So fun to be with you.
So let's get started by having both of you give us a little background on your career paths. And I'm using that career paths very broadly, right? It doesn't always have to be paid work. I include motherhood as part of a career path. It teaches you so much. But Emily, let's start with you. How did you get to where you are today in doing the work that you're doing? I know that's probably an hour question, but I'm going to give you a few minutes here.
Exactly. Okay, we'll try to narrow it down to the highlights on this. I grew up in a suburb of Salt Lake, so I'm a Utah native, and really I remember going to college. I went to BYU undergrad, as you said. And I remember getting there and thinking like, I have no idea what I want to do. I had an interest in politics, but I remember kind of stumbling over it and thinking, there's no career path from here. Like my family never talked about policy, politics, nothing like that. And so I hesitated on that. Went into journalism instead, and then ended up going to grad school. I worked in like marketing and public affairs, public relations for a while, and then ended up starting this clothing company because I do love myself some good fashion. So I started that clothing company, did that for a
And you had
handful of years.
kids, some kids throughout this
Yes.
process,
It
right?
was during, yes, I had kids. I had kids. Right. I remember I was pregnant with my first when I started Shabby Apple. And that was like in my head, I was like, I mean, babies, they don't do anything. They don't like, what do they do? This will be a great time to start a business. So needless to say, that was a steep learning curve right there. So I had a bunch of little kids. We were living in Ohio, and then we moved to Richmond, Virginia. And I will say by the time we moved to Richmond, I was maybe 4 years into Shabby Apple and having my third baby. And I was like drowning in my life. My husband was in a residency, which made it so he was super busy and occupied. We were extremely low income, like just kind of struggling to get through the day. And around that time, I actually was diagnosed with like a health problem, a heart problem, due to pregnancy. And I was so overwhelmed. I'm sure many people can relate to this. It was just a point in my life when I was like drowning in the world around me. And I decided that something had to go, and I could either place several of my children for adoption or I could sell my business. So it was a toss up. Just
Good choice, I'm sure.
I ended up selling my half of the business to my partner. And then as I started to get better and things started to normalize in my life, I got into some strategic communication consulting, and I did love that. But the more I lived, and we kind of lived in different places, I just have a natural interest in lives that are different from mine and what those might look like. And so I think I started reading, I started observing the world around me in a more like articulated way, like noticing things I hadn't noticed before, especially this idea that someone could live 2 or 3 miles from me, a mile from me, and have a life that looked completely different from mine. And my brain just could not find a healthy resting place for that thought. Like, how is it that I could have gone to the same school as this person, or I could have, we shop at the same grocery store, but like they're struggling to get through the day, and my day comes pretty naturally. I mean, I'm definitely annoyed at a million things in a day, but ultimately don't have that many big problems. And so I think that kind of anxiety grew for me, and I decided that I needed to do something about it. And it was in this kind of quest to figure out what I needed to do. I tried volunteering at homeless shelters, doing a coat drive, adopting
All good, all good.
and so necessary. Those things have to be done. But for some reason, it just wasn't quenching this. Like I was stumbling over, we're not reaching the masses. Like what about the numbers? This is a numbers game, and we're never going to come out on top. Those things are necessary, but I was kind of obsessed with like, how do we reach everyone? And I had this experience where I realized that that policy, although I had not done anything in policy before, but I realized, policy is this incredible tool that we can use for good. And that when we use policy as a tool, it goes upstream of problems. So it fixes problems on the front end instead of like a coat drive. How do we make it so this person never needs the coat drive? How do we make it so they have a coat, they buy their own coat, like it's taken care of on the front end? And so I was extremely attracted to this idea of policy and ended up forming a nonprofit called the Policy Project.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. Lots of other questions coming your way. But Kristin, give us a little bit about your life in terms of, career. You know how I'm defining career. Because you're doing things that a lot of people would think that you're doing everything within maybe a paid job, but that's different, but it's still a career.
Yeah. And it was funny because as we read your notes, it kept saying career. And I wanted to stop and say like, but it's not. And I thought, well, or it is, you know,
Right.
like, you know, we can frame it anyway. Oh no,
We're having a fire drill. Hold on one
we're in a
second.
new building here.
We can't hear it.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
okay.
Okay.
We don't see a fire, so we should be good.
There's not a lot of people in the office today, just a lot of workers. So hopefully that doesn't keep going. So, because we're talking about nonprofits in general, Emily talked a lot about the policy route, but I'll tell kind of how I got involved in the nonprofit realm, because it can be in so many different ways that we as women can lean in. And I see people do it differently. And I love that people do it differently, because we need policy and we need coats and we, you know, need all of these things. And so what I have found is we had a couple of successful outcomes in business, and really there was kind of this day, like I remember the day, I remember like trying to think, like, what do we do from here? Do we buy cars and boats and a new house, or do we kind of take the path less traveled and give back? And so as we sit here in Traeger, I laugh, and like, my husband sells grills and I try to give away as much money as possible after we sell the grills. But that's our joke, but also what we do. We just decided that we don't want to live a life of consumerism. I don't like consuming. It actually just stresses me out. I have 6 kids, got a lot going on. But the more that we're outwardly focused, I think a lot of us, whether we have, you know, high income, low income, our kids are entitled in a way that our children never have before. And so it also has been an incredible lesson and culture that I felt was absolutely necessary for my family and my children to see what we do and that we choose to give back. And by the way, it's rarely about money. It's about our time and our talents and our resources, meaning whatever we have at our fingertips to be able to give back in the world. And my kids need
Connections
reminders.
sometimes.
Huh?
Connections to other people, introducing. You're so good at that. You just introduce people to other people, and then that makes,
Yeah. And so I love, it has been the joy of my life to wake up, and when I drop my kids off at 8:30 until 3:30 and I pick them up, to be engaged in the community. And sometimes it's that I found gaps. Sometimes it's that I'm bringing people together. Sometimes people are, you know, bringing me in. But I would say the entree into that is just showing up, right? You'll understand what's going on. You'll start asking questions, being curious. The reason I got involved in the Utah Period Project with Emily is I showed up at Kids Eat on a Wednesday afternoon to pack period products. I'm sorry, to pack food bags.
Yeah.
And ended up leaning in and sponsoring a school. And then I leaned in and asked the school, what else do you need? And then I, you know, like at every point along the way, I was curious, I was asking questions. And once again, this isn't about money spent. Like, it actually has nothing to do with writing a check for a nonprofit. It's about being willing and able and open to give of what you have to be able to improve those nonprofits around you. And then it's grown to where I work with a lot of nonprofits now, and I'm able to kind of give them access and, like you said, connections to maybe those people or resources that they may not have. And I'm able to bring them together. I like to gather.
I love
And
it.
often I've sat and said, what am I good at? What can I do? And that's how I'm
You
going
are awesome at that.
do better. But I also know that I'm not an expert at policy, right? As I'm sitting at the table, I'm thinking about getting the community involved. I'm not thinking about specifics of a bill. And so I think when we work to our strengths of what are we good at and building on those strengths rather than, I don't focus much on my weaknesses. Emily would know that. I'm like, I'm bad at a lot, but it doesn't matter. So I really am always focusing on what I'm good at to try to be the best I can there.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I've got a whole list of questions, but I'm gonna ask you a different one than is on my list, because I think the listeners would find it interesting. So a lot of times when students are learning about leadership or people are thinking about leadership, they're thinking of this formal leadership role, which we have here and there, you know, in our lives, but there's also just leading and leaning in, leading, influencing. That is leadership too. I guess my question is, Emily, I'll go back to you. What does leadership look like to you for yourself, but when you see others? I mean, yeah, tell me a little bit about leadership in your mind.
Yeah, I love this question, especially just because I'm here with Kristin, and I remember, after starting, I'd done Shabby Apple, done a couple other things, and then starting the policy project. My goal was just so like linear. I was like, okay, we got to get good policies put in place so that it can be a happier, healthier society. So I remember actually, just because we're here, I'm thinking about this, texting Kristin a couple years ago and being like, does Jeremy have any good books on leadership? Because I'm pretty sure I have no skills in this area, and I remember, I think it was because the leaders that I'd seen, the people I'd worked for, like just laying it on the line, all male, very pretty commanding, and I am not commanding.
Yes, you are.
Like, I mean, I like to boss people around once in a while. But the things that I'd seen, I had interpreted as the only way to lead. Now, what I didn't realize is that as I was building something, naturally you're leading when you're building anything. When you invite one person to your home, when you are leading. I never saw those characteristics or traits as leadership traits before. I also did not see that, like, a style of like, I really love people and I really like, I feel much more comfortable like leading people along, like, hey, let's come to a compromise. Let's like sit around a table and talk about it. And let's do it that way. I would never have thought that was leadership before. I would thought it
And
was
it is.
just figuring
Yeah.
this out. But now I can see, like, years into this, like, there are many different ways to lead, and to accept that, like, what your natural talents are, almost like Kristin said, like, forget the things that you are not good at. I'm never going to be like, I want that by 5 o'clock. You better make it happen. But I will say, like, we really need it by 5. So is that a possibility for today? Like just the way that you say things, the way that you do things. I think like leaning into your own natural tendencies is actually your strength, and then really building on those. But I will say that leadership is not what I'd originally defined it as in my mind. I thought it was like a checklist. You have to be this, this, and this. And it's really like, you know what, if you can convince people that you have a good idea and you are willing to invite them and put yourself out on the line like that, you're leading.
And you said convince, which is, and persuasion. I mean, that's what you are doing all the time. And
Yeah.
influencing and persuasion, I picture your kids, because I've seen them and met them all. You are doing that all the time as a mother. I mean, we get lots of practice influencing, don't you think?
And I would say that, I mean, that's a great point. Like if you, for people that are here with us today that are mothers, or great, or if they're aunts or, have any relationship with children, you are leading. You're already naturally set up to be a leader because you have to lead in those situations. When you're dealing with children, you have to lead. And so you just naturally have, like, ironically, women have an incredible ability to lead because they're used to convincing little bodies that don't want to do what you want them to do. Like this morning, my son getting out the door, those kinds of things. So I think just leaning in on those kind of tendencies or characteristics that we've all developed.
Great. Anything to add, Kristin?
Yeah, leadership for me, especially online and kind of in the different platforms that I'm in, what I've kind of boiled down to is being brave and bold in my life, which then gives others the permission to be brave and bold in their life. And I say that especially for women, because I'll be out there, whether it was initially talking about periods or posting something that's controversial about sleepovers or and like all day long. And I know that it's going to ruffle feathers.
Yeah.
I'm going out and being brave and bold. I'm failing. I'm messing up. I'm apologizing. And I'm also not asking women to do what I'm doing or do it in the way I'm doing, but I'm showing and modeling bravery and boldness, hopefully giving others the permission, because sometimes as women, we need that permission. Wow, she's doing that. Maybe I can do this in my own way, in my own life, in my own circle of influence. And so I heard that once and I thought, it was this aha moment of that is exactly what I'm doing and I'm trying to do for my children. I have 4 girls, for women, in the state of Utah and beyond.
So what I love about what you said, I love everything about what you said, but one thing is, I've had these experiences through the years where people, if they have a failure, especially these are women, then they stop. Like I remember years ago that this administrative assistant, she had put in an application to get a master's degree, and she was turned down by the university, and she tried once. And I stood there when I remember exactly this conversation. I told her about all my failures. I'm like, do you know all of the, and she was like, oh, okay. And so you
Totally.
said something about you're okay. But women often, we beat ourselves up on failures. Did it take some practice to just fail, be okay, and move on? I mean,
Yeah, I was born, I think, with this innate feeling of like, I don't really care what people think. It's and I think it's a learned behavior. I think my mom modeled that really good for me. Like she did things, owned it, was like, this is who I am, how I live my life, and kept going on. And so I feel like when you own what you're doing, when you own your failures, when you apologize, when you say, I mean, I look at the policy project, I'm the rogue one that's always like putting my foot in my mouth, messing up, but it's also what makes me great, right? Like, and so I feel like sometimes our failures, our boldness, generally it's me like speaking out of turn or saying something wrong, or I mean, we've been in multiple conversations where I am like getting like I'm getting yelled at because of something I said, but that's also why I'm there. You know, I'm showing up and I'm gonna mess up and I'm like, whatever. I genuinely don't care. I probably should care more what people think, but I don't. And so it allows me this, like, I'm going to keep going. Like they're not stopping me. And that's what I want for my kids too. Right.
that's probably one of the reasons so many people follow you on social media and YouTube is because you're just come across as real. I've known you for a few years, and it is just who you are. And people,
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I think there's two sides. I think a lot of our youth want realness, right? But on
Right.
the other hand, we're torn with the social media and the perfectness. Speaking of that, Emily, I'm going to give you this one, and maybe I'll just give one per unless you want to both answer it. But
Yes.
one thing is, have you, and I know you already talked about this a little bit, have you ever been so discouraged that you just wanted to quit? And if
Oh,
so, how did
yes, I'm
you?
like, yes, like
I
everybody
actually
knows
know
that's
a
what
little
you're
bit
asking.
about the
This
background.
morning or
Most of
last
the day.
night.
And how did you get past that?
Yeah.
I I have that sometimes as well, and you just kind of get past it. So talk about that, Emily.
Yeah, no, I think for sure. I don't even know if you're doing anything good in your life, you're gonna have those moments. And anything good, I mean, I remember having 3 little kids, and I remember distinctly this feeling of, okay, I have just enough money in my bank account. If I ever need to leave, I can fill up my car and I can drive. We were living in Virginia at the time. I can drive to the West Coast. I'll just leave. I'll just leave, you know? Like I remember the frustration there, you know, like this is too much. I can't handle this. And then absolutely like, literally Kristin wasn't kidding. I mean, this week, you know, you're dealing with the legislature and sometimes
Oh,
you just want to give them a big hug and other times you don't. So, so, so I would say, yeah, that's a very real part of life. I think again, it's just something that is naturally tied to anything good you're doing in life. There is a feeling of exhaustion. I have said many times, like, I don't really love like adulting. I'd prefer not to generally because I think especially as women, we feel so much responsibility. Like we're responsible for our children or our, you know, our careers, our husband, our neighbors, our church, our, you know, community. We feel so much responsibility, which is what makes the world so beautiful, is that there are people that just feel responsible for things and it is helpful to us. But I think for me, I think it's just allowing myself to be okay with like getting through those moments is like coming back. I love being 45. I am 45 and I can look back at my life at this point and just see like other times that I failed, other times that things were hard, and look at like what mechanisms did I use to get out of those times, or what things, you know, thoughts did I say? And I will say just this week, we had something kind of crazy happen with the project we're working on right now, the Safe Child Project, which is basically this effort to prevent child sexual abuse.
Mhm.
And so I think you can't find a person on
Such
earth.
an important topic, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that's your real focus this year.
Yeah.
We do struggle with that in the state of Utah and every place, but there's some evidence that we're slightly higher than the nation, 1 in 7 kids, and
Yeah.
that's not acceptable. It
No.
is not acceptable.
No.
So thank you for leaning in.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it is such a big issue. And when we see it, none of us want to see that. It's like the worst, right? So first of all, we're dealing with like a very heavy subject matter. It's one that we have both expressed times, like even in just bringing it up, we've had many women and men who are survivors of this come and kind of share their stories. And that's heavy and that's hard. And we're not trained therapists and, those kinds of things, like we're really, so you've got that. And then when you start getting pushback, which you get pushback, we got pushback on periods, on teen centers, we get pushback on everything. So that's never unexpected for us. We're okay with it. And I think actually the two of us especially we can kind of muscle through it. But I will say that there was a time this week where I got kind of afraid, I got a little scared. I got scared that things were a little out of control with just some different factors that were pushing against our work here that really did not want us to be successful in this effort. And for me, I actually have there's a scripture in the Bible that says for God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I just try to, that has brought me solace many times in life, whether you believe in a God or don't, just think about that. We're not supposed to have the spirit of fear. It's power, love, a sound mind that can get you through anything. But I have to be reminded of that, especially when you have those moments of it was a very deep, dark weekend for me. And so, I had to kind of take a couple days, let myself get really dark and depressed and weirded out and feel like the whole world was ending and then kind of pull myself out,
We do that sometimes, and we just breathe. And personally, I taught exercise for years. My master's was exercise physiology and so forth. If I get on my elliptical, I'm missing being outside more. I can't do that as much with the weather. But there's things, I play the piano or go, and then you breathe and that. So I did, I don't know, Kristin, if you wanted to jump in there, but let me tell you the next.
Yep.
You do such a good job of empowering yourself, obviously, and women around you. And you talked about that a little, but a few more thoughts that you have about how do we, and thinking of the audience today, whether students, whether stay-at-home moms, whether people working in business, how can we better empower ourselves, but empower women around us, whether that's our daughters or neighbors or anybody, people in our church or anybody. You're so good at that.
Yeah.
Give us some of your tips.
Yes. And once again, I actually think I am good at that because I think it was modeled to me growing up. Right. And so if it wasn't modeled to you growing up, can you be that model for your children, your neighbors, the people at your gym, at your church, wherever? And so I saw a mom who volunteered in the community. I saw a mom who exercised every day. And by the way, I brought this up the other day and someone said, well, how did you guys get ready without her being there? And I was like, kids can get ready, So I find now in the morning, I get up, I do some type of spiritual work for shorter than I should do. I work out, I get ready. My kids are very independent. I every day ensure that my cup is full. My kids sometimes sacrifice for the work I do in the community or my husband's out of town. And I think being a part of a team and a family, you ask that of your children, of your neighbors, of friends around you. Hey, I need help. I ask for help all the time. And so every day I ensure that I am taking care of myself. I remember there were years where my husband was out working and successful and doing all this stuff. And I just sat there and I'm like, I wasn't happy because I was waiting for him and his successes.
We wait a lot in our life sometimes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And sometimes waiting, I think of Joseph Granny, who sometimes says waiting is working and for children. And sometimes we have to wait for things. But for our own selves, we have to ensure that we are meeting our own needs. So there was literally a day, and I remember it, where I was like, this is no one's problem but mine. I am investing in help. I am, not going to the movies or out to dinner, but I'm going to get a babysitter because as a mother, I know who I am and I need a break. My husband travels a lot. That means I want to start a book club. So I started making sure that my needs were met on a daily basis. You can look at that as selfish. I do not believe that with anything I am. I believe that when we are better, when we are full, when we are 100% ourselves without a reflection of our husband, of our kids, of our friends, of our work, that can often tell us who we are. We have to be that without anyone else telling us that. And we have to say, I am my only, even if you have supportive friends, family, I am my only advocate.
Yeah.
I am the only one that every day is going to be looking out for me. And when my mental health is sound, my physical health is sound, I'm getting the sleep, whatever that is, then now, by the way, that is enough in itself.
Yeah.
But also we can then show up in a way for our family, for our community, for our spouses, for our, whoever that is, our village, so much better. So to say that it's selfish to watch out for yourself, to take care of your needs, in the end, you end up so much better. I have thousands of women talking to me every day online, and I will tell you, many are victims. Many are not taking this into their own hands. They are waiting for others to do it for them.
Yeah.
It will never work.
Well, let me just tell you about in Utah, we are 49th of 50 in terms of women's preventative health care. I want you to think about that.
Wow.
And we are in the lowest group of women getting their mammographies. So those two.
I need to book mine right now. I actually do.
I'm just telling you that because there has been, and I started hearing this 15 years ago when I was doing research and talking to people about going to college and graduating. I had women say, no, I stopped because it's more important to do my family, and it would be selfish of me to go back. And then when you look, I had an OBGYN years ago in Utah that left because she was tired of telling women they had cancer that wouldn't get mammographies. And she said, I can't do this because they're like, I'm too busy with kids or I'm too busy. But what you're talking about is connected, I think, where sometimes we have the culture of we have to sacrifice everything to be a good mom or to be a good community member. So you don't buy into
false
that
narrative. That is a false narrative. And by the way, so once again, living in a bold and brave way and sharing that. I remember sharing, I get help. I have this, I do this, I take time for myself. I go on a walk when my kids are all home by themselves. Like when I share that with others, they're like, I can do that too. I can't tell you the hundreds and thousands of women who have come back and said, I did this because you said it was possible and I didn't even know I could do it. And I'm so much happier. I'm a better wife. I'm a better mother. I'm better at my job. But it was like someone needed to give them the permission. And if their mother didn't, or their caretaker didn't, they haven't ever been given that permission. And 9.5 times out of 10, it's like, oh my gosh, this has changed my life. But we have to model that. We can't just talk it. We have to live it.
And I just have to say on that same thought, like that was one of the things Kristin and I met and became friends like almost a decade ago. And it was one of the things that I love the most about her and brought me so much peace is that I don't think I had seen some of that modeled. And Kristin was so good. Like we saw things pretty similarly as far as like our roles and what we wanted to do with our families. And we want them to be great and know that they're number one, but also there are a lot of other things that we needed to do. And so, and I remember observing that in her. And I think that we live in such a very cool time because, social media can be great and it can be hard for women. It can be both. But if we put ourselves in places where the women that we're looking at are inspiring us, you can see so many different models of a life well lived. You can see so many.
It looks different.
Yeah.
Yes, so many models of mothering, parenting, sistering, wifing, whatever, all these things that, and see a way for you to do it rather than maybe the way that some of us grew up, which is there's only one way to do this. It's just the false narrative. So I love that like Kristin is so good at that and totally inspired me with that. But I think we can find even more examples of that out there now.
Well,
Thank
even
you so
Emily
much.
and I, as neighbors, being like, this is so, we both had like little kids. We both like, we were so honest, like, this is so hard.
So hard.
Like this,
It was
we
so
don't
hard.
like this. Like this, we need to get out of the house. Like just even that honesty between neighbors
That
was
helps.
so refreshing. And it
helps.
was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. By the way, everyone feels that way, you know?
It's
But we
true.
need to be more honest with each other as women. And that's how we bring each other along. She's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. I wanted to, Emily, you inferred this, but starting a nonprofit, running a nonprofit, and Kristin, you're well aware of nonprofits and struggles and all of those. Tell us more about the challenges that we have generally in your profession, but as a woman in your profession too, with all the things we handle as women.
Yeah. Oh man, that is I'm like, what are the challenges? There is all a challenge, right?
Where do
I
you start?
think- yeah, yeah, it is. I think, as far as running a nonprofit, the challenge is it was new territory. And so I think that women, especially women, hesitate. They hesitate to think that they're qualified to do things. I remember talking to a woman one day who was saying, she had an interest in running for office. She was interested in the legislature. I remember saying to her, like, yeah, you 100% should do that. And she was like, well, I don't have a PhD. I was like, can I introduce you to some of my friends at the legislature who many don't have college degrees. There aren't any qualifiers for being in public office. The qualifier is your desire. That's literally it. And so, and man,
your voice.
like a thought,
And using your head, well, actually head, heart, and hands, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
We hope they're all combined. Sometimes
Yes. But really there isn't like anyone can do it, but sometimes as women, we put on these weird like expectations of ourselves that nobody else has for us. No one's, as Kristin says, like, no, we're not, like, no one is thinking of us all day long. No one's obsessing over like, oh, she doesn't have a PhD. She shouldn't be ready for office. Like, no one's even thinking about it. So I would just say, like, sometimes we put these expectations on ourselves that we cannot, that no one else is putting on us, and we need to let that go. As far as challenges specifically with the nonprofit, I would say it was different. It was very different being a group of women going up to Capitol Hill. That was different. I think that Kristin and I were actually up there yesterday meeting with someone and laughing because the first couple times we went up there, you could tell everybody was looking like, what do these women think they're doing? And not that there weren't women there, they were women there. There just weren't women that were like, laughing really hard.
We were told we were too loud.
Yes, we were too loud. Please be quiet.
You were really told that?
Yeah. Yeah, multiple times. Yeah. So I think just like being like, well, this is what we bring. And actually the Capitol is the people's house. So we are the people. We will be there. So I think just kind of accepting like, this is who we are and being okay with that and just going with it and not letting, and I'll be honest, like one of the ways that I overcome that is by having good people like Kristin, like our other team members that we work with. I feel braver with numbers, and I think we all do. And so when you can find friends, like-minded people, like-minded women, especially when you have a buddy and you can leave and be like, that was so weird. They told us that we had to be quiet. Like you can kind of almost take that away and make it a joke. Then that ends up being like a really helpful coping mechanism.
Oh, and Kristin and I are both coughing on the side.
I'm actually not
We're
sick at
just
this moment. Shocking.
I love it. So those of you listening in, be putting a few questions in that I can ask. But let me ask one more right now until we get a couple of questions. I think people are just enthralled with you too. and just listening.
We have fun. We have fun.
I enjoy being around you. I'm just I'm just one of your biggest fans to both of you.
Same
So,
to you, Susan.
Yeah.
Love you. Well, and I do see a question. I just want to say really
Oh.
quickly, like, grateful for all of the comments. I love the comments. Some of them are like making me tear up. They're so cute. So thank you. I do see a question about, is there nonprofit training available? Do you want us to jump into questions?
sure. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, and there are a lot of different nonprofit trainings available, and I can tell you this person is asking about something for Pacific Islanders, and we need work in that area. We need advancement and just more opportunities for that community for sure. And there's a Utah Nonprofit Association is what it's called, and they do a whole bunch of trainings for nonprofits. This is a confusing, crazy world for nonprofits. It's, you have all these stipulations and stuff. And so definitely check them out. They do that's their entire purpose of existing, is that they do training. So
I love that. And I would also suggest that sometimes we think about like there's a women's business center of Utah that helps women who start businesses.
Yeah.
Now, this is starting an organization. Maybe they work with people, and there's other groups as well. But a nonprofit and the way that you have yours set up is just not something it's actually a formal nonprofit.
Yeah.
Big deal.
So,
It's a big
It's a
deal.
very big deal.
yeah,
Let me
it
tell you,
is a
I've
big
formed
deal.
several LLCs in my lifetime, started businesses, not nearly the learning curve of a nonprofit. That was kind of second nature. They're pretty easy. Nonprofits are not to discourage anyone, but it is a lot. You jump through a ton more hoops to make a nonprofit.
But some of those SPDCs, the Women's Business Center, they have workshops, and most of them are free on things related to pieces. So in business, you're always thinking about marketing. Do you market in nonprofit? Yes.
It's just
Do
a
you
business.
manage money?
Yeah.
You wish you managed more money, but do you
We
manage?
actually say all the time, I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons that our nonprofit has been, that we've been able to get some traction and do pretty well, is that I think we run it a little bit more like a business, just in the way we think about it, because a lot of us kind of have that type of brain.
I would love to answer some of the questions about the
Yeah,
Safe
go
Child
ahead.
Project.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is legislation. We have a bill, it's about to be numbered this week, where we are working on child sex abuse prevention education in schools. And so 10 years ago, there was a bill that said children may receive this education in schools, but we're only to about 10% of education that our kids in Utah, about 10% and less than that, are really receiving this education. So we are trying to get funding and some stipulations in place to ensure that many more, we'd love to see up to 100% of kids in schools, and this is K through 6. So it's age appropriate and, family approved education. We've had rural, families and families from all over the state look at this education, sit through the classes. It is such good age appropriate education for our kids. And so we're teaching them from a very early age. These are the 5 trusted adults I can talk to. I can say no. If I can't say no with my mouth, I can say no with my head. And so, knowing that 55% or more of child sex abuse happens in the home with someone you live with, we can't just be teaching it in the home. And so the school is absolutely the place that from a very early age, and by the way, we don't even say child abuse until like 3rd or 4th grade. So we're really just teaching kids tools about their bodies, about what we can say no to. And the other really interesting reason that we need to be in schools is that a lot of us are just concerned about our children as, the victim, but half of child sexual abuse cases in Utah are child on child. And so what I love about education in schools is that we are teaching the perpetrators from a very early age that this is wrong, this is not okay, this kind of experimenting. And by the way, this is real life. I will tell you, I have twin 7-year-old boys, and my husband's out of town. They were in my room last night at 10 p.m., way too late for 7-year-olds. And they said, Mom, we had these 2 friends over and they all wanted to show each other our privates. And so they were pulling down their pants. And I thought, I just sat there and listened. And one of my children, one of the twins said, I told him, he says, this is appropriate, which he meant not appropriate. And I'm going to tell my mom. And my other child did it. Right. And so it was like this. And by the way, I've also had another family member in the last couple of weeks tell me that around the same age, he had something happen and it escalated in a very, very traumatic way. And so this is not them. This is not in that town, this is in my home. I also haven't had an issue with a high schooler with a non-touch, so this is it's epidemic of incredible proportions that's happening in my home. And I think probably in yours in some way. And so we have to address it where we reach every single child in Utah. This is not an other problem. This is a problem that really is in every single one of our households. And so the bill and the money would go towards this education, K-6, teaching them from an early age, what's appropriate and what's not.
It is. I just can say I've been, in this area as well. And when you think about, and you're good talking about it without getting teary-eyed, because I always do. When you think about 1 in 7, that is not someone else's community. That is, and actually, I don't know if you two have been able to read yet our 2-page report on what Utahns think. There's some interesting data on that.
We should, can we link it on the chat?
Susan has the most beautiful kind of snapshot of what's going on in Utah.
Yeah, I can definitely put that in there after I ask you the next question. So, and then I will look for it and put it in because a couple of my staff are on, but actually, why doesn't someone on my staff put it in for us? And if I'm talking, one of you can grab it and put the link in. But we'll get that to you definitely in the follow-up as well, because we wanted to see what Utahns believe. And it's really interesting because there's a lot of neutral. There's a lot of, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot, I don't really know if that's true or not, or whatever. We've got to move that. And home is a great place to do it. But what we know is it's not happening in many homes. And that's why the combination, thank you so much for your work. 1 in 7. There's a point here. 1 in 7 are just documented. Actually, that the data are hard to find. And we need more. And that's one of the things that we're doing, because we know that even though it happens to boys, it will happen to a lot more girls.
Right.
That's what we know. But we want to do legislation that helps everybody, right? Helps all. But, the number, when you extrapolate that to adults that have gone through that, I'll tell you, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people in Utah that are survivors of that.
Right.
Oh, everyone we talk to.
Well, what's interesting is, if I would just suggest everybody, if you don't know what an ACE is, and that's an adverse childhood experience, this is a big one. Alcohol, having an alcoholic in your home, other things do, but the link to so many negative things in life later are just critical. And 1 in 7 is unacceptable. And you two have heard me say this, that why are we not moving to heaven and earth to protect our children here in the state of Utah?
I have plagiarized that times. Then I can read it to you. It is, because it is the truth. It is the truth, and it is only going to get worse with online things that our kids are going through. My gosh.
Exactly. So I'm going to share.
Can I just say one other thing, just one last thing about that? I'll drop this in the chat for people, but I do want to just say the thing that we love about the work that we're doing is that there's a concrete way to get involved and feel like you're starting to stop this kind of stuff. And that it isn't dealing with the treatment of people post trauma. It's trying to get to the root so they don't experience the trauma. So we'll drop in here love for volunteers. We have a bunch of events coming up like every single week in a different county. We also have opportunities to come up to Capitol Hill and kind of check out what's going on, legislators, all that stuff. I will drop the link in here, but just wanted to say, if you care about this, get involved because we need voices on this. We do.
And we will do a follow-up email once we get this video edited a little bit.
Great.
Perfect.
we will send a follow-up and we can put the links to whatever you want us to put in there. And I just need to say thank you for the policy project being such a strong partner in a bolder way forward for Utah. That's
Thank
one
you.
of our spokes, and we have Supriya and Malou Foundation and Prevent Child Abuse are the spoke leaders, and other groups like the Policy Project are in there. Really, you are taking the lead for the public policy.
Yeah.
We have to do many other things too, right? Besides public policy, but that is such a key thing. So thank you so much for being part of that. So we'll get those things out to you. I do want to ask a question that our listeners really like, and that is, what are a few resources, each of you, like books that you really like, or trainings, or that you really think would be helpful for women in terms of finding our voice, leaning in, whatever's helped you? Kristin, let's have you go first. What would you recommend?
Everything and anything. I would read more. I would listen to podcasts. I would listen to podcasts or books that you think might not be interesting to you, that maybe isn't down your niche. I think the more that we can be aware of different life circumstances, as Emily mentioned, of different thoughts. Sometimes, I'll read news that is totally not in line with how I view things because I want to understand how other people view things. I think opening up our minds as women, because, we're going to have children or neighbors or friends or community members that think differently than us. And the more that we can kind of think again, I love Adam Grant and I really like to question why I think the way I do, or question the way that I do things. And so the more that you're exposed to, and by the way, sometimes it's novels, because my brain needs a break from child sexual abuse. Like, I can't read Demon Copperhead right now because I literally can't handle it. I'm reading like a murder mystery, and it's great because that's what I need right now. Sometimes I'm in a learning mode, and, I listen to a podcast every morning or a TED Talk that just gets me thinking. And so I would say, I remember, I don't know why I keep talking about my mom, but I remember my mom always said that she read Time magazine and the newspaper every day because she wanted to be able to have things to talk about with my dad when he got home, which is like such a funny thing. But I actually love, and she is so current with all current events, but she could talk to anyone about anything because she is well read. And so I think I probably do that now. I read actually way too much. Like, any chance I get, I'm reading or listening, but it opens up my life in a way that maybe here in Salt Lake City, I wouldn't have access to without it.
I love it.
Yeah, I want to echo that too. I think, sometimes you'll get advice like, oh, people love like self-help books. I cannot stand them. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I must really not want to help myself here. I need all the help I can get, but I don't. But I will say, I gotta echo what Kristin said on just the kind of like a broad range. Because for me, you do learn when you read, and by reading, I mean listen, because Mom, I don't have time to sit right now. So at some other phase when my kids are grown, I will sit and read a book, but just like listening to books. And I can tell you that, there are a few that I love that I've been inspired by, and they're very rarely like this statistics books, there's they're very rarely those books. They're usually books that tell a story of a life. And then all of a sudden I can understand, oh my gosh, that life is so different from mine. So I would say Just Mercy, is an incredible book that should be a must read, just as far as just understanding a life different from most likely most people on this call or on this Zoom. I love Sarah Smarsh has a couple books, and I'm forgetting
Homeland.
what. Yeah, Homeland. Is that what it is? Homeland? Yeah.
I think so.
But
Heartland.
Sarah Smarsh, Heartland.
Yes. Oh
Please,
my
this is about women in
Yes.
poverty in America. I would say what Bridges Out of Poverty was a great one for just understanding.
Yes.
Sex and World Peace, that is a hefty one. You got to
wow.
take some deep breaths.
Important.
Take some deep breaths, but everyone, if you are a woman, if you were born with the chromosomes of a woman, you need to read this book because it is like, it tells you the truth, why we should care about women, you know? So I think for me, it's more about that variety that Kristin's talking about, and also doing things, just like we said, lead how you want to lead, you know, be yourself, like all these things, like, if you're not, I don't listen to podcasts hardly ever unless she forces me to, right? So I love books. And so I'll like read these books, and they're not self-help. They're usually these other ones, you know, but you can learn in the way you want to learn, but just expose yourself to information. Expose yourself to information, but definitely those books, put them on your must reads. Then you can text me later and tell me how much you loved them and how grateful you are that you read them.
The Homeboy Industries
Oh,
one that we
oh
love.
my gosh. Tattoos on the heart.
Tattoos on the
Kristin
heart.
told me about this one. Will change your life. Tattoos on the heart.
And
Gregory Boyle.
Boyle. He has multiple books, Singing to the Choir.
Excellent.
They will
Oh
blow
my
your mind.
gosh. Thanks so much to both of you. I appreciate you doing this. Anytime I ask you to do things, you jump in, and I appreciate you so much. But thank you again for the work and the influence that you have in the state. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Utah Education Network, John M. Huntsman School of Business, and USU Extension for making this event possible. So thanks to everybody for joining us again today, and have a wonderful rest of your day and a weekend coming up. Thanks, Sue. Thanks so much.
Susan.
Thanks.